in Fargo. And it's such a great place, and it's something that we are always thankful to hear what's going on, because Rob and his team are the hands and feet of Jesus to so many people in our community, and we're always glad to get an update on how things are going, and Rob's good enough to stop by. We got a big event coming up here in the next couple of weeks, actually next week, there at New Life Center. And but more than anything, it's good to find out what's happening in our community with folks that need a good home. Rob, thanks for coming in. Great to see you as always.
Hey, thanks for having us over.
You were telling me before we started the visit that you had 121 people with you last night. 121. That seems like a really big number. How is that trend-wise compared to where you were maybe 3 to 5 years ago?
The numbers definitely have gone up. We are in overflow right now, which means we've got guys sleeping on the floor. And so of the 121, we had approximately, I think there were 16 guys on the floor last night, meaning we've got room for up to 27 in that capacity. So of that 121, 16 of them came in just within the last week and a half.
Wow.
As soon as the weather turned. And so folks wonder, well, it's not too bad out yet. Is there really a need? We are over capacity again.
No question about that. When someone comes to you, how long will they typically be with you before they find opportunity or move to somewhere else? How long do you typically have folks to stay?
It depends on what program they're in. And so one of the things that I want to educate folks on, as far as us as an organization, we certainly provide emergency shelter. That's one of the things that people think about when they think about us. But one of the most important things I feel, yes, emergency shelter, we're literally saving lives, getting people out of the elements, is our longer-term transformational programs. And so in our emergency shelter, typically we're around 30, 32 days. So it's basically a month, okay? So that's fairly short. And in reality, when someone has substance abuse issues, or I'm trying to get my life back together with a relationship or whatever, a month really isn't long enough, but there are folks that's what they need, and they've decided, and then they move on. And then we've got gentlemen that are in our longer-term programs, and our newest program, which is our relapse prevention program. That program actually is a year-long program. And so right now we've got 4 guys in that program.
Do we have any idea how many homeless people there are in Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo area right now?
The last numbers that I saw, the number's over 800. So there are more individuals who are in need in our community than there are, for example, shelter beds or program beds like we have. So then the question is, well, where are those folks? If there's 800 people and there's only 300 some beds, where is everyone? And the reality is there are a number of people who are outside, hence the 16 that just came in. There are folks that are sleeping in their cars right now in a lot of neighborhoods in our communities. There are folks who just don't have the means to have an apartment. For whatever reason, they've chosen not to come to some place where they can come indoors. There are also a lot of individuals who are, the term maybe couch surfing would come to mind. And, I'm just going to stay at a friend's place. I've got an aunt whose place I can crash at for a little while. I've got an old girlfriend I can stay with a few days. But when all those bridges are burned, where do you go?
That's right, yeah. Do we know of the 800, how many of them would be children age 18 and under?
I don't know that off the top of my head. Yeah, I don't know that.
There's got to be some, though, right?
Oh, without a doubt. That segment is definitely growing. The largest segment of the population who are homeless still is individual single men. And so we know that statistically in our community. We know that across the nation. It's been that way. But the reality is families, women and children, those segments are growing.
I would guess there's no typical story of how someone comes to you. Some it might be an addiction, some it might be a mental health condition, some it might be just down on their luck or had a bad run. We've all had that happen to us where the expenses of life gang up on you and you get a bad break, you make a couple bad choices maybe. That doesn't help it out either. But I'm guessing there's no typical script.
There really is not a normal story. And what is normal, right? When I think about how someone becomes homeless and the education that we as an organization want to provide all the time or through our events, whatever, we try to answer that question. And you probably wouldn't think of this when you look at me, but technically, according to HUD and according to the numbers of folks in our community, when I was 19, I was homeless. I was at a point where I was in a lot of trouble. I was basically not connected with my parents in a good manner, if you will. I'd been in trouble with law enforcement, and I was sleeping on a couch at a friend's place, multiple places over a period of time. I would have never considered myself homeless. And it's funny when I talk to some of the guys, even at the mission. One guy I talked to not that long ago, he said, well, I'm not homeless. I just don't have any place to stay right now.
Mm-hmm.
So even there, in his mind, well, I'm not, quote unquote, one of them. I'm okay, but I'm not one of them. And the reality is there is no them. It's we. Everybody needs help at some point in their life.
I was in Houston last summer for a little while, and there was a massive homeless community in Houston. And I have been in Minneapolis, and I've seen a large homeless contingent kind of over by the Walker Arts Center, living, under bridges and in areas where there's at least some shelter from overhead. 800 in Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo. I wouldn't have thought that number. This is obviously an issue, and it's growing, and it's everywhere. It can get kind of hopeless when you think of numbers everywhere, and there's more all the time. It seems like the numbers are growing. I imagine part of the goal is not to look at it in terms of all the people everywhere, but try to look at it. Success and failure might be best measured one person at a time rather than take a look at the aggregate.
And you nailed it so well right there. We get frozen by indecision when we look at the large scale problem. Whether you're talking about things on a global scale and you look at the massive issues around the world or even in our community. And sometimes it's, I'm going to let someone else take care of that. The reality is these folks are part of our community. They are here. And what can one person do? We have opportunity for folks who say, I want to find out, does serving a meal at the mission really make a difference? It does make a difference. We had a great testimonial from someone recently who was there doing some training with our staff, proficiency training on our relapse prevention for our case managers. He caught a ride back to the airport, and the cabbie asked him, well, what are you doing, here in town? And he said, I'm from California. I'm just flying out. I was here working at the New Life Center. And the cabbie said, oh, I got to tell you, that place, the attitude of the folks that I'm picking up there has changed over the years. He said there seems to be much more gratitude and appreciation. Now, that's from someone who is totally unsolicited. We didn't know that. We would have never gotten that comment had that gentleman not sent it back to us.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if we don't work together one at a time to help people, how in the world do we expect to see a difference in our community?
Yeah. Do you have any theories on how we can start to stem this tide of more and more people across the country in a homeless situation? How do we begin to solve the root causes of that problem?
I will tell you, it's not throwing money at it. Money is important. Money brings lots of things. But one of the things that we just talked about, Steve, is one of the most important things is people getting involved in an organization somewhere, wherever. There's lots of great organizations that are making a difference. But get involved in an organization that has a high people value. Because if all we do is slap a Band-Aid on it, and housing is extremely important. I don't want to go down the road of people saying, oh, you're not about housing. I'm all about housing. But if that's all the answer is, we put people into housing and they're lonely and isolated and they revert back to behaviors that got them in trouble in the first place. Honestly, it is caring about people enough to stop and engage and build relationship.
It all kind of comes back to us being interactive in our circle, right? The people that we know in our world and trying to help them before they get into a situation where things get to a bad spot where there becomes a mental health condition or there becomes an addiction of some kind. Isn't that really where it all has to start?
Absolutely.
The home and the family and friends.
There's so much of that, Steve, that goes back to if we can engage people and help them understand what healthy behaviors are, what healthy skills are, there's so much generational poverty, for example, in our society right now. We're one of the most affluent countries in the world, but generational poverty is growing. And if we don't engage those individuals, and the men are so important in
Yes,
that
they
picture.
are. Yeah. We are. Yeah.
We are. It doesn't mean, there's so many different ways to do it, but it's people getting involved.
Yep.
That really is what the answer
Strong
is.
dads, strong husbands. I think it all starts there. As men in this country, we got to take a look in the mirror. You got an event coming up next Tuesday night. Your big dessert social. You're having Ron Hall back. Tell us about that.
So Ron Hall was here 2 years ago. He was our keynote speaker 2 years ago. And his story is an incredible story of, we think about, can I make a difference? I don't relate maybe to quote unquote those people or whoever. Ron was an international art dealer. So we're talking
Picassos and Monets and
honestly,
yeah.
millions of dollars worth of pictures being sold all the time. And his wife basically made him go with him to a rescue mission down in Fort Worth, Texas. And in 1998, someone come blazing into the mission where he was serving a meal. And this guy said, I'm going to kill everyone here, basically. And his wife said, you need to get to know that guy, right? That's the last guy I'd want to get to know.
Seriously.
Yes. But Ron felt the Lord leading him in that direction. He befriended this guy who was honestly a modern-day slave and in 1998. And they struck up what was an incredible friendship. So think about international art dealer, runaway modern-day slave, African-American gentleman who ran away from a plantation in the South. And these two guys strike up this unique friendship. And what Ron, who basically had all the answers, right? If we're doing well, I've got all the answers. What this illiterate gentleman taught him was incredible. And so 2 years ago, he told the story of basically that storyline through the death of his wife. And people said, boy, we want to hear Ron again. That was great. Wish we could hear him again. So we've got him back, and Ron is going to tell kind of the second half of his story. After his wife died, he had this gentleman move in with him. And what he learned caring for this person and this person caring for him, going back to relationship, this is kind of the second half of his story. So he's a phenomenal speaker. And one of the things I want folks to know, too, is we're not just bringing in, there's a lot of fundraisers, and they're important, and I'm going to one actually tomorrow night. There's a lot of good things that are happening in our community. I also want to educate people when they come to one of our events. So yes, we're going to have an inspirational speaker, but I also want to help folks understand through video, and we've created a new video, how does someone become homeless? And we kind of talked a little bit about that. And so we're hoping out of this evening, people will come away with a little better understanding what that looks like.
Rob brought in 2 tickets for the event next Tuesday night, and we'll give them away. First caller at 701-271-1100. Yes, if you're watching us on the video link, you can see the envelope in his hand right there. And if people want to find out more, tell us the website people can learn about it.
You bet. It is fargonlc.org/events.
Rob, thanks for all you're doing, and thanks for coming in this morning.
Thanks for helping us spread the news.
Rob Swiers from New Life Center. Check it out if you have the opportunity. You'll learn a lot.